Welcome to Barnstable Today. I'm Nick Cortez. The school committee last week met for nearly 4 hours to discuss numerous issues, and today we'll take you back to last Tuesday night to take a closer look at some of the committee's more significant discussions and decisions. The school committee for several months now has been discussing the possibility of purchasing and operating its own fleet of school buses. But after receiving a surprisingly low bid for contracted bus service through 2017, making such a large capital investment suddenly appears more impractical than it once did. Here's Assistant Finance Director Gareth Markwell.
Through the process, decided to fine-tune the numbers that we were using in our assumptions, and we put a RFP out to bid, which closed about 3 weeks ago now. In an attempt to firm up the numbers. While we were all surprised, I think Jim Flahive, our transportation consultant, was probably floored the most at the results of the RFP that we put out. Our assumptions to date had been based on the last 2 option years that we currently have under our existing contract. So we were firm in those numbers. Where we needed that magic 8 ball was looking into the years 3, 4, and 5 of our projections. Working with Jim Flahive, we had estimated based on what other numbers were coming out of South Coast school districts, that an increase in the area of approximately 10% at a very minimum would not be a surprise. When we received our RFP, First Student, the current vendor, came back with a very aggressive bid. We rebid out those first 2 years, and they came within was a couple of $1,000s of the current bid, and that third year bid was equal to a 3% increase on that second year. With a 3% increase each year. So I think it came out to $470,000 less than what we were originally projected at that 10% mark.
Markwell went on to explain that foregoing the contracted bus service in favor of a town-owned fleet would save about $778,000 in the operating budget over 5 years. But as you'll hear, when the full cost to the town is taken into account, the savings is minimal.
To identify what the true cost might be when we factor in the potential upgrade of a parking lot and also the insurance of those vehicles. The insurance was excluded from our operating budget because at the moment those are included as part of the town's operating budget, or the fixed cost allocation that is taken off before we appropriate out the money to the town or the school departments. So it's actually the procurement office that maintains all the insurance bills for every vehicle, including town and school. So you wouldn't see that line item in a transportation budget for our district, but I figured it's worth calculating that into the numbers. So our estimates for the lot construction, and we're still waiting on the environmental study. We're ballparking around 500 to 600,000. So I've put in a conservative estimate of about 550,000, and the 5-year cost of the insurance is 200,000. So if we were to subtract that out from the 778,000, we're looking at a 5-year cost avoidance for all funds, even though you would recognize more in the operating budget, but the total cost to the town as an organization we would save approximately 28,000.
So, with that information in mind, Markwell explained 3 possible options to the school committee for how to move forward with in-house transportation or not.
The Model 1 is what I consider the most aggressive, and we would certainly be up against some deadlines to achieve this, but it's certainly manageable. And that would be to bring our transportation in-house, effective July 2012. So our final year of the existing contract would be the 2011-12 year. We would require the favorable land study and using that site located at the high school. We have the 5-year operating budget cost avoidance of $778,000. But we do have a 5-year vehicle residual value at the end of that 5 years of $1.9 million. The second model, and Jim Flahive brought this up to you at the last meeting, was looking at the long-term benefits of what I term controlling our destiny a little bit more when it comes to in-house transportation. In this scenario, we suggested that we do sign the contract that we have just received through the RFP process. That would give us the 3 or 5 year options after the final year of our current contract. Within that time, we would look at doing a needs assessment on the transportation department facility and the maintenance department, and trying to overcome that obstacle of having a long-term solution for the maintenance of a fleet. And the third option is essentially award the current RFP and no construction. As I had mentioned, Jim Flahive was floored by the response that we had. It was a 3% increase per year, which from our current rate is just great. So we could sign the new contract. First Student has provided a competitive price. We would see no substantial increase in resources for our financial resources for our regular end buses. We would still be at the whim and fluctuations of the marketplace when we come to that 3 or 5 year mark. We would still need to address potential maintenance transportation facility issues in the future, and we would have no of those cost avoidance savings.
Superintendent Dr. Patricia Grenier recommended that the school committee pursue the third option, that is, to award a new 5-year transportation contract and to revisit in-house transportation sometime in the future. The school committee agreed, thereby putting off the possibility of a town-owned bus fleet for at least a few more years. In other news, school lunch prices will be slightly higher next year thanks to a new federal mandate that attempts to ensure that free and reduced lunch funds aren't being used to subsidize entire school lunch programs. Once again, here's Assistant Finance Director Gareth Markwell, followed by the school committee's announcement of and vote on the new lunch prices for next year.
Federal government came out with guidelines suggesting that, they capped it at no more than a 10-cent increase in any given year. We do have confirmation from the state, however, that we would have the option to set our own prices. However, we felt that a 10-cent increase is an incremental increase that will benefit the program, but also will be manageable for the program participants. In making that decision, we were mindful that this won't be the last increase. So we're going to have to continually look at this each year in order to maintain the requirements of the federal guidelines. Essentially, they've said that if you're charging at a particular level for a paid lunch, then your free and reduced subsidies are subsidizing the entire lunch program. So they're really mandating that we no longer can sell our meals at a particular level unless we want to clearly designate money from our operating budget to subsidize it.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to improve the following lunch prices for the 2011-2012 school year. $2.10 for an elementary paid lunch, $2.35 for a paid intermediate school and high school lunch, and $2.75 for a faculty lunch as recommended by the superintendent and the deputy finance director.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any other questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Now, let's take a look at this week's upcoming meetings. Well, that's all for now. I'm Nick Cortez, and we'll see you next time on Barnstable Today.